Speaking about taking a step back, going back to rugby, I know you mentioned that the sevens really put rugby on the map for Hong Kong, right? How is rugby generally perceived in Asia and more specifically in Hong Kong?
Right. So I guess obviously there's a lot of the typical responses that people get, like, oh, it's so dangerous, oh, it's so violent,
Especially in Asia.
aggressive,
yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Asian bodies weren't made for this kind of sport. I think like that's a lot of like misconceptions, but sure, like if you've only seen things being modeled a certain way, then obviously that's what you'll think of, right? If you've not seen like, an amazing Hong Kong sprinter run through the rugby field and score countless number of tries, which is what I saw growing up. Like, a Hong Kong track runner was then converted to a rugby player, and then she, forego her chance I think at the Olympics for running, and then decided to take up rugby, and then it ended up being like a superstar local player who did a lot for the women's game, for example. If people aren't seeing it, then they wouldn't really know, like, there's other things to the sport apart from getting, bashed or contact. There's other elements to it. If you're strategic mentally, but also if your team is strategic and has game plans, you could, there are ways to capitalize and, avoid. If contact is perceived negatively, I think then that's probably like one of the reasons why people also don't want to get into it. But there's speed as well that, kind of makes it interesting, and also the strategy, right? Like, you don't have to keep getting hit if you're really good at passing or and if you've planned 5 plays ahead of time and then you respond to whatever comes in front of you. So I think like that's probably like the misconceptions people have, that it's high contact. It is high contact, but there's more to it too. And if there's 15 people on a field on one team, for example, if you're playing 15s rugby, not 7s, then there's a lot of load that you share and amongst 15 people on one side. Football is 11. So therefore, like, I don't think the contact per person will be that much necessarily. Whereas in 7s, there's like 7 people on one side, there's a lot of gaps in the field, which more of them or all of them can run through. So I think there's those kind of misconceptions which could then be, thought of and envisioned differently. Like if you know better, like different parts of it, you see it happening, then you'll probably then think of it differently, I think. Yeah.
So in terms of that, right, would you say that Hong Kongers are more worried about their children for the physical side, or would you say it's like Korea? Which country is more scared of these types of things?
In Asia?
In Asia, yeah.
Oh, that's a tricky question. I wouldn't be able to say who is necessarily more scared. I think, like, if anything, sport is being seen as a vehicle of like getting out of like grassroots and accessing opportunities. If anything, I think like the sport actually, with the sponsors that are backing it, you see a lot of rugby camps taking place in India, China, like Cambodia, Thailand. Sport, I think in Asia right now is kind of like a means to kind of, alleviate, other detrimental factors that you're faced with or grow up in, and kind of give you access to opportunities and exposure in a way. So I think like, I don't think it's being perceived necessarily as dangerous. If anything, all sports are dangerous. Any day-to-day living is dangerous.
Absolutely.
So I think like the shift is quite there with the sport actually across Asia, where, Japan's doing an amazing job leading Asia at the front of it all, and like, just showing us like with Japanese like physiques as well, you could still put yourself on the map, women's game and men's game. They're doing so well, and obviously there's a lot to look at inside what they're doing, their practices, their culture, their diets and everything that kind of then challenges like the whole narrative, like, is Asia like, good at rugby or not? But I think like it's amazing to see the grassroots work that's being done across, the next big populations apart from China. So like India, other regions in Asia. So I think that risk factor isn't really being seen as much anymore. In fact, there's a lot of rules changing within the sport to kind of mitigate the risk and kind of make it a little safer in a way, especially like, the whole concussions awareness that's going on and talks about it. So I think like, if anything, it's growing, and inclusion for it and channels for it to spread is growing a lot more. Just purely because sport is there's so much investment value to it, and then the commercial value. These big countries with scale of population, they obviously understand that. And so like using sport as a tool for the country to grow different sides of the economy, but also like the people in the country to have access to that other healthier hobby or practice, and then chances to get better and probably go outside and do things as well. So if anything, I think that fear is kind of like probably decreasing in a way.
That's perfect. I totally forgot about the opportunities. I mean, like